The airport loudspeaker echoed like a judge's gavel. Boarding gate C-23, final call. But the real shock was not at the departure gate. It was inside first class, where a black man had just been asked to leave, as if his very presence was a mistake. Marcus Hale, 40, 5 years old, wearing a simple grey suit, carrying a dark leather briefcase, his eyes steady and all, was not a familiar face to the other passengers. To them, he looked like an ordinary, middle-aged man, seated in the most prestigious part of the cabin. They had no idea, nor could they imagine, that a single signature from him could decide the fate of the airline itself. He placed his briefcase in the overhead bin, then opened a leather notebook worn at the edges. On the first page, one word stood bold in black ink: dignity. Dignity. Marcus knew it was the one thing he would never bargain with, even if money and power could buy everything else. The cabin fell into a hushed stillness, as if everyone sensed the storm waiting to break. A flight attendant approached, Dana Whitfield, 38, her eyes sharp behind a forced smile. Her voice cut down like a blade. "I'm sorry, sir, but this seat has been reserved. I need you to move to economy." Marcus looked up. His eyes held no arrogance, no anger, only a calm that unsettled her for a moment. Slowly, he drew out his boarding pass and handed it over. His name, his seat number. A. Clearly printed. Dana frowned, as if the document was still not enough to justify his presence here. Behind them, a tall white man, Victor Lang, 40, 2, in an expensive suit with a Platinum Elite card dangling from his lanyard, interjected, "This is my seat. I've flown this route every month for 10 years. He's in the wrong place." His voice rang out like an order, enough to make a few passengers glance over. Marcus said nothing. He simply closed his notebook, his finger still resting on the word dignity. That touch was like a silent oath. In seat 2C, Naomi Brooks, 29, glanced at her phone and pressed record. Her voice was low but firm. "There's discrimination happening right in front of me. Do you see this?" The air thickened. Some passengers avoided eye contact, fiddling with watches, flipping through newspapers. Others watched intently, as though they were in a public trial, but hoped not to be called as witnesses. Victor sneered, his smile dripping with contempt. "Let's not drag this out. People like you don't belong here. Move along. We need to fly." The words ripped through the thin veil of politeness. Short, cold, but exposing the truth everyone else had tried to ignore. Marcus drew a deep breath. Memories surged back, being stopped at the gates of a golf club, being asked for extra paperwork at 5-star hotels, being told to prove himself in places where he was one of the largest shareholders. Always the same script: prove you belong. None of those moments were ever easy, but this time, he decided, would be different. He locked eyes with Dana, his voice low but firm, each word heavy as iron. "Is there something about the color of my skin that makes you believe I don't belong in this seat?" The cabin froze. Dana's mouth opened, but no answer came. Victor forced out a laugh, trying to break the silence. "Don't turn this into a race issue. This is just the rule. This seat, this service, isn't for everyone." Naomi whispered into her phone, her eyes burning. "Did you hear that? His own words. This is America in 2025, and it's still happening." The clicking of phones, the glow of cameras lit the cabin. Passengers who had been silent moments earlier were now witnesses. Marcus carefully closed his notebook, slid it into his briefcase, and sat upright. He fastened his seatbelt as if bracing for takeoff. Then he spoke slowly, clearly. "Call security." It was not surrender. It was a challenge. He knew a storm far greater than this flight was about to begin. The whispers rose through first class, like an undercurrent beneath the sea. Some passengers exchanged uneasy glances, their eyes caught between discomfort and fear. Phones were lifted higher, the glow of recording lights flashing like lightning in a storm. Dinah Whitfield clutched the boarding pass in her hand, her fingers trembling slightly. She had never seen a passenger sit so quietly, yet make the entire space feel pinned in place. Marcus Hale had not raised his voice, had not shown anger, but his stillness alone felt like a wall of steel pressing against her authority. "Sir, you need to cooperate," Dana pressed, trying to reclaim control. "If you don't, I'll have to call security right now." Marcus only raised an eyebrow, his voice dropping like a hammer into the silence. "Then call them." Victor Lang let out a scornful laugh, patting his platinum card as if it were a medal of honor. "What, are we going to sit here all day? A man without class should know his place." His words sparked the air like a match to dry kindling. Some passengers shook their heads in frustration, others turned away. But Naomi Brooks gripped her phone tighter and spoke firmly into her live stream. "You heard him. This isn't procedure anymore. This is naked prejudice." In Marcus's mind, memories surged. He saw his father, a mechanic from Atlanta, with calloused hands and eyes that still shone bright despite a life of hardship. His father's words returned. "Son, don't shout in a world that already screams. Let your silence be the voice no one can silence." That lesson became his compass now. Marcus sat tall, unflinching, every breath and glance amplified by the cameras around him. Dana's hand touched the radio at her hip, her voice shaking, though she tried to sound firm. "I repeat, this is the final warning. If you don't leave your seat, I will call security." Marcus turned to her, speaking slowly and clearly. "And what will you tell them is the reason for removing me?" Valid ticket. Valid papers. So where is the danger? His question pierced through the fragile mask of authority. Dana faltered, her eyes darting to Victor for support. Victor jumped in at once. "This isn't about the color of his skin. It's about rules, standards. Clearly he doesn't look like someone who belongs here." The words "doesn't look like someone who belongs" dropped like a gavel. Several passengers gasped, whispers turning into audible outrage. An elderly woman in row 3 lowered her newspaper, her eyes burning with indignation. Naomi turned her phone to capture every angle, her voice urgent. "Do you see? This isn't about a seat. It's about the message, who is allowed to exist here, and he's refusing that message." Marcus closed his notebook and set it on his lap. On the page, the word dignity stood bold. He pulled the seatbelt across his chest, the soft click, echoing like a drumbeat in the silence. "Call them," he said firmly. "Because if I stand up today, then tomorrow any one of you could be forced to stand up too." His words poured into the cabin like wind, spreading through everyone who heard them. Some bowed their heads, avoiding his gaze. But inside, they knew he was right. Dana yanked the radio, her voice trembling. "Control, send a gate supervisor to first class. Passenger non-compliant." The air thrummed with anticipation, a storm on the verge of breaking. Naomi whispered into her camera, eyes locked on her screen. "The whole world is about to see this. Don't look away." Marcus leaned back, hands clasped on his lap, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He did not need to shout. His calm was already a storm beneath the surface, and everyone knew the moment of eruption was now only seconds away. The sharp rhythm of high heels echoed across the jet bridge. First class fell silent as every head turned. Paula Nguyen, the gate supervisor, 40, 1 year old, appeared with a rigid stride, an electronic clipboard clutched tightly in her hand. At her side, 2 airport security officers, Ortega and Hayes, stepped in. Their dark uniforms and heavy steps made the cabin feel smaller with every movement. Dana exhaled in relief, as if she had just grabbed hold of a lifeline. She quickly pointed at Marcus. "This passenger has refused to comply with my instructions. He is occupying seat 1A, but cannot verify his payment card. We need to remove him immediately." Marcus sat still, his seatbelt fastened, hands clasped, eyes steady like stone. He said nothing at first. That silence alone made Ortega hesitate. This was not the look of a disruptive passenger. No alcohol on his breath, no shouting, no chaos. Only a calm so unnerving it made the moment feel heavier. Paula leaned in, her voice firm though edged with unease. "Sir, we've received a report that you refused to leave your seat. We need your cooperation so this flight can depart." Marcus lifted his gaze, his voice low, every word clear. "I have a valid ticket. Seat 1A is mine. I've sat here quietly, caused no disruption, broken no policy. So tell me, exactly how have I failed to cooperate?" The question punctured the thin shell of procedure. Paula faltered. Dana jumped in, her voice urgent. "He refused to provide a payment card for verification. That's the rule when suspicion arises." Marcus tilted his head, eyes locking on her. "And what about him?" He nodded toward Victor Lang, who stood arrogantly with his hands on his hips. "Was he asked to show his card?" The cabin went silent. Dozens of eyes turned toward Victor. His face flushed red, though he forced a smile. "That's different. I'm Platinum Elite. I've flown this route for 10 years. Everyone knows me." Marcus replied, his voice deep as thunder. "And me. Simply because I don't look like the people you expect in this seat, I'm forced to prove more. That is not procedure. That is prejudice." Naomi Brooks clutched her phone tighter, her live stream rolling, her voice trembling with conviction. "You hear that? He said it. No one can hide it anymore." Ortega glanced at Hayes, both men hesitating. They had faced drunks, brawls, shouting matches. But here sat a man calm as if in a boardroom, nothing like the disruptive passenger the report had described. Paula's tone hardened. "Sir, if you do not vacate the seat, we will be forced to take physical action." Marcus closed his notebook, tapping a finger lightly against the single word inscribed: dignity. Then he lifted his gaze, sweeping the cabin. "I will not leave this seat, because if I stand up today, tomorrow any one of you could be forced to stand up simply because someone didn't like the way you looked. And I will not feed that silence anymore." In that moment, a passenger in row 3, Evelyn Carter, 62, with silver hair and quiet grace, spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "He's right. I've been sitting here the whole time. He's done nothing wrong. If anyone should leave, it isn't him." Her words shattered the wall of silence. A few nodded in agreement. A man in seat 1B, Harold Quinn, cleared his throat. "I can confirm it too. He has the ticket. I saw it with my own eyes." Victor scoffed bitterly. "You don't understand. This is about standards, about class." Evelyn cut him off, her voice sharp as steel. "No, this is about fairness." Marcus closed his eyes for a brief moment, listening to the pounding of his own heartbeat. He knew the storm had truly begun, and this time he was not fighting only for himself. Noise swelled through first class like crashing waves. On one side, Dana and Paula clung tightly to procedure. On the other, passengers began to raise their voices in support of Marcus. The air was so heavy that even a single breath could be heard. Victor Lang still refused to back down. Arms crossed, his voice dripped with arrogance, as though he were the one handing down judgment. "Enough. Let this flight depart. He should leave, and if not, then drag him out. A man like him demanding seat 1A. It's laughable." The words cut through the silence like a knife. A few passengers gasped. Naomi Brooks hissed through her teeth as she zoomed her live stream closer on Marcus's face. In the live chat, comments erupted. "Keep recording." Did he just say that? That's blatant discrimination. Marcus opened his eyes. Slowly, he unfastened his seatbelt and stood. No rush, no trembling. His every movement was measured, deliberate, as though each second had been accounted for. Paula startled. "You're ready to cooperate now?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He held up his hand to stop Naomi from lowering her camera, then gave a small shake of his head, signaling her to keep filming. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a black phone with silver edges, faintly scratched from use. With a few taps, he placed it on speaker. A male voice rang out, respectful and unmistakably clear. "Mr. Hale, the board is awaiting your final signal on the deal with Aerovista Air. Do you want us to proceed to a vote now?" The cabin froze. Dana's eyes widened. Paula's face drained of color. Victor staggered, as if struck in the chest. Marcus turned slowly to Paula, his voice not raised but heavy as stone. "You asked how I was failing to cooperate. Now I ask you, do you even know who it is you're trying to pull out of seat 1A? Naomi's breath caught, her live stream exploding with thousands of new comments every second. Evelyn Carter, the silver-haired woman, raised her hand to her mouth, her eyes burning bright. Marcus paused for a beat, then spoke, short and precise. "I am Marcus Hale, chairman of Hale Global, and with a single signature, I can collapse a $500 million deal with Aerovista Air, the airline you work for." The sound erupted. Some passengers clapped, others shouted in support. Naomi cried out, "You all heard that. He's the lead investor." Victor stammered, his face flushed red. "You You're threatening us?" Marcus turned, his gaze sharp as a blade. "No, I'm not on to threatening you. I'm showing you the true cost of contempt." Paula scrambled to intervene, her voice trembling. "Mr. Hale, I'm certain this is all just a misunderstanding. Please, let's remain calm. We'll resolve this right away." Marcus drew a steady breath, his eyes locking on hers, his words slow and cutting. "You call this blatant humiliation a misunderstanding? You call forcing me to provide proof while he was never asked a procedure? No, Paula, this is no longer about a seat. This is a mirror reflecting the true face of Aero Vista." Naomi turned her phone, panning across the cabin. Passengers nodded, some applauded, whispers rose. "That's right, exactly." The live stream surged with trending hashtags. Marcus Hale, dignity, not for sale. Marcus sat back down, closed his phone, and said simply, "Inform the board. Cancel the vote. Aero Vista has just destroyed its own chance." The cabin erupted with noise. Dana froze, her trembling hand gripping the passenger manifest. Paula stepped back, her face drained of blood. Victor swallowed hard, his eyes desperate. And Marcus? He sat steady, seatbelt fastened once more. Calm, unyielding. A man who did not need to shout, for every word he spoke had already turned the cabin into a public courtroom where Aero Vista was condemned by its own silence and prejudice. First class was no longer a cabin of luxury. It had become a public arena where every eye and every camera pointed to one man, Marcus Hale. Naomi Brooks clutched her phone with trembling hands, her live stream exploding with so many notifications that the screen filled completely, 50,000 people watching live. Comments poured in like a flood. Is the name Marcus Hale real? That's the CEO, my God, they just humiliated a CEO. This clip has to be shared immediately. Evelyn Carter squeezed her husband's hand, her voice shaking. History is happening right here. We are witnesses. Dana Whitfield's face was ghostly pale. Her heart pounded like a hammer against her chest. Every word she had spoken replayed in her mind. You don't belong here. You need to verify your card. Now each of those words echoed like a loudspeaker, not just in the cabin, but blasting out to the world beyond. Victor Lang collapsed into an empty seat nearby, sweat breaking across his forehead. The Platinum Elite card around his neck now hung like a chain of shame. He muttered under his breath, almost to himself. They'll put this in the papers. God, my career is over. Paula Nguyen tried to salvage what little control she could. She stepped forward, her voice softer but struggling for steadiness. Mr. Hale, on behalf of Aero Vista, I apologize. What just happened does not reflect the values of this airline. Please, give us a chance to correct this. Marcus raised his head, his dark eyes unflinching. He did not shout, but his voice rang across the cabin. Correct it? An apology whispered in the shadows cannot erase a humiliation carried out in the light. You did not only demean me, you demeaned every customer who has ever swallowed injustice under the disguise of procedure. Today that silence ends. Naomi raised her phone higher, capturing Marcus's face, whispering to her viewers, "Do you hear him? This isn't just an incident. This is a movement." In the row behind, Harold Quinn whispered to his wife, This will spread. I bet within an hour. It'll be on every channel. He was not wrong. Even before the plane left the gate, thousands of recordings, clips and comments had flooded Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. The hashtag #DignityNotForSale shot to the top of the global trending list within 10 minutes. Major outlets, CNN, BBC, Reuters, were already calling Aerovista for confirmation. In the airline's control center, crisis monitors flashed non-stop. Phones lit up red. Internal emails blasted in all directions. A PR manager shouted, "The stock is crashing. We've lost 8% in just 15 minutes." Inside the cabin, Marcus quietly opened his notebook, turning back to the familiar page. The word dignity stared back, bold and unshaken. He tapped his pen against it gently, as though underlining a manifesto. Officer Ortega cleared his throat, turning to Paula, his voice low but firm. "Ma'am, from what I see, this passenger has done nothing wrong. If we continue down this path, the risk isn't just to this flight, but to Aerovista itself." Paula swallowed hard. She understood. Control no longer belonged to her. Marcus looked directly into Naomi's camera, his words slow and deliberate, each one carved into the air. "Dignity is not for sale. No first-class ticket, no membership card, no billion-dollar contract can buy it or strip it away. Today I remain seated not just for myself, but for everyone who has ever been forced to give up their seat, forced into silence." The cabin erupted with applause, not scattered but unified, surging like thunder. Evelyn Carter wept openly, whispering, "At last, someone has spoken for millions." Naomi's voice broke, trembling with emotion. "You heard it. This is the moment the world will never forget." Marcus sat back down, fastening his seatbelt. He closed his notebook, shut his eyes for a brief moment. He knew the battle was only beginning, but the storm had already broken beyond this cabin. It was now sweeping across the entire sky. Outside the aircraft cabin, the world had already begun to shake. The giant screen in the JFK Airport lounge flashed a breaking headline. "CEO Marcus Hale confronts Aerovista Airlines on board Flight 310. Live stream attracts over 200,000 viewers." Inside the cabin, Naomi Brooks looked up, her eyes wide as the notification appeared across her phone screen. "CNN has joined the stream. BBC is rebroadcasting." Comments surged like a flood. "Is Marcus Hale's identity real? That's the CEO, my God. They just humiliated a CEO." "This clip has to be shared now." Evelyn Carter gripped her husband's hand, her voice trembling. "History is happening right here. We are witnesses." Dana Whitfield stood frozen, her heart pounding like a war drum. She swallowed hard, her mind spinning. The entire world had just seen her cold stare, had heard her words, "You don't belong here. You need to verify your card." Now each syllable felt like a shackle tightening around her throat. Victor Lang sat slumped in a nearby seat, sweat streaming down his forehead. The phone in his pocket buzzed non-stop. Surely messages from his company, his friends, the press. But he dared not look. Each notification could be the end of the reputation he had built on elite status. Paula Nguyen, the gate supervisor, tried to maintain professional composure, but her palms were soaked with sweat. She took a sharp breath, then stepped closer to Marcus, her voice softer but straining for control. "Mr. Hale, I realize this has gone too far. We are prepared to rearrange the cabin, provide any service you require, and issue a public apology." Marcus raised his head, his posture straight, hands resting on his closed notebook. His voice was not loud, but it carried to the very last row. "You think a complimentary meal or an apology over the intercom can repair this wound? No. The problem is not the seat. The problem is a system that always demands I prove I belong, while others are accepted without question." The space seemed to explode, not with noise, but with absolute silence. Passengers sat motionless, their eyes fixed on Marcus as if hypnotized. Naomi clutched her phone tighter, her voice trembling as she spoke to the hundreds of thousands watching. "He just said what we've all felt but never dared to name. This isn't about one man. This is a mirror held up to all of us." Ortega, the security officer, cleared his throat, his voice carrying unexpected weight. "With all due respect, I don't see this passenger breaking any rule. If we force him out, the consequences will go beyond this flight. I will not take part." Hayes, his younger partner, nodded, lowering his hand from his radio. "I agree. This isn't the way." Paula froze, the ground slipping from beneath her feet. For the first time in her career, she felt her authority collapse, not just before these passengers, but before millions watching beyond. Marcus slowly pulled out his phone once more. He dialed, then set it on speaker. A sharp female voice filled the cabin. "Mr. Hale, this is Clara Jennings, head of communications. The market is in chaos. Aerovista stock has dropped 12% in half an hour. The press is exploding. We need direction. Do you want us to release an official statement now?" Marcus held the silence for a long moment. The entire cabin held its breath. Naomi zoomed her camera in close on his face. He spoke, each word striking like a gavel. "The statement will go out. The reason is simple. Aerovista humiliated a customer. But that customer happened to be the one holding their $500 million deal. Let the world see the true value of a seat and the true cost of contempt." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Victor clutched his head. Dana trembled. Paula staggered back, her eyes wide with panic. Evelyn Carter broke down in tears as applause erupted, spreading from the back rows forward, first scattered, then rolling like waves crashing on shore. Marcus did not smile. His face remained solemn, his eyes distant, as though already beyond this narrow cabin. He knew, from this moment on, the storm had outgrown him. Not just Aerovista, but the entire airline industry, the entire world would now be forced to confront the word written in his notebook: dignity. Outside, the New York sky was still gray, thick clouds warning of a storm. But the real storm was not above the city. It was erupting below, in every news bulletin, on every stock exchange, in every click across the world. News channels cut their regular programming, the red breaking news banner flashing non-stop. Billionaire investor Marcus Hale accuses Aerovista of discrimination on board Flight 317. #@dignity. Not for sale reaches 2 million mentions in less than 45 minutes. Reporters crowded outside Aerovista headquarters in Manhattan, microphones thrust toward the glass doors, while inside, only the silhouettes of frantic employees running back and forth could be seen. In first class, Naomi Brooks let out a small sob when she saw the notification on her phone. "Mr. Hale, do you see this? We're streaming live worldwide. Over 1 million people are watching right now." Marcus opened his eyes. He wasn't surprised. Instead, a strange calm rested on his face, the look of a general who had always known the battle would spread far beyond the first field. Evelyn Carter wiped a tear from her cheek, whispering to her husband, "I've lived more than 6 decades, and I've never seen a moment like this. He's doing what so many have never dared." Victor Lang hunched low in his seat, his hand trembling as he held his phone. The screen glowed with a message from his assistant. "Major clients have cancelled. The press is calling you the face of white privilege. The company wants your resignation immediately." He gripped the device tighter, his face crumpled. For the first time in his life, the silence of others had become his own sentence. Dana Whitfield stood pressed against the wall of the cabin, her heart heavy with regret. The image of her leaning forward, frowning, holding out the boarding pass, replayed again and again in clips circulating online. She wanted to scream that she had only been following procedure, that it was all a misunderstanding. But even she no longer believed those excuses. Paula Nguyen took a call, the voice on the other end harsh in her ear. "The press is calling us a toxic system. Stock is down 15%. The board demands a solution immediately. Do whatever it takes to contain this. Do you understand?" Paula ended the call, cold sweat dripping down her temples. But when she looked back at Marcus, her eyes met his steady calm. At that moment, she knew. Control had completely slipped from her hands. Marcus opened his notebook. The word dignity blazed across the page like a beacon. He spoke softly, just loud enough for all to hear, as if reminding himself as much as everyone else. The market may lose billions, but if the world fails to learn the lesson of dignity, it will lose far more. Naomi raised her camera closer, her voice breaking with emotion. "Do you hear him? This isn't about money. This is about humanity." In the operations control room, Clara Jennings, head of PR, clutched her head and shouted into the phone, "We need to control this narrative. They're calling him the Martin Luther King of the skies. If we don't respond, Aero Vista will collapse." Back in the cabin, Ortega, the security officer, nodded slowly toward Marcus. "Mr. Hale, I don't know much about stocks or the media, but I know justice when I see it, and you were right not to stand." Scattered applause began, then grew stronger. Soon it thundered through the cabin like a storm. Naomi's voice cracked as she narrated to her live stream, capturing every second. Marcus sat still, his eyes not on the cameras, but fixed out the small window on the darkening sky. He knew this fight was no longer his alone. It had become a social storm, and he was the lightning strike that set it off. The sky outside the window had darkened, but the real storm was rolling across the ground. In newsrooms from Washington to London, red banners flashed across the screen with breaking headlines. "Marcus Hale confronts Aero Vista in first class." "Airline crisis spreads worldwide." On Twitter, the hashtag #dignity not for sale hit 5 million mentions in just 2 hours. On Facebook, millions shared the clip of Marcus saying, "If I stand up today, tomorrow any one of you could be forced to stand up." In Washington, a White House spokesperson stepped to the podium, for an unscheduled press conference. Camera flashes exploded, the sound of shutters firing like bursts of gunfire. We are aware of the incident involving Mr. Marcus Hale on Flight 317. The federal government is closely monitoring the situation, and the Department of Transportation will launch a full investigation into Aerovista Air. The words echoed into first class through the live stream. Naomi Brooks gasped, eyes wide. Mr. Hale, did you hear that? The government is stepping in. Evelyn Carter broke into tears, gripping her husband's hand, her voice trembling. All my life I waited to hear this. Finally. They have to pay attention. Meanwhile, at Aerovista headquarters in Manhattan, an emergency meeting erupted. CEO Leonard Pierce, his face gaunt, slammed his hand on the table. We are losing control. The stock has dropped 22% and is still falling. The press is calling this the biggest scandal in aviation history. Who was on that flight? I want the full passenger list in 5 minutes. A nervous aide stammered, Sir, Mr. Hale himself is the key investor in the merger deal. The room exploded. Pierce staggered, muttering in disbelief. God, him? We've just destroyed our own $500 million deal. Back on the plane, Paula Nguyen seemed cornered. She stepped toward Marcus, her voice almost pleading. Haile, if we land in Los Angeles, we can arrange a private exit, away from the press, and negotiate, please. Give Aerovista a chance to make this right. Marcus turned, his eyes cold and sharp. You still don't understand, do you? This is not a negotiation. This is a judgment of justice. And justice does not have a back door. Victor Lang, the man once so brazen, now sat hunched, hands shaking as he scrolled through his phone. Emails lit the screen. The board demands your resignation immediately. Partners have cancelled contracts. You are suspended indefinitely. His breath came fast, his face ashen. The words echoed in his mind. A man like you doesn't belong here. But now, he was the one with no place left to stand. Naomi turned her phone toward the audience, her voice urgent. Everyone, this is no longer a flight. This is a courtroom of our time. And the verdict is being delivered before the whole world. Ortega, the security officer, nodded slowly. Mr. Hale, I respect you. I've seen plenty of disruptions, but never someone who fought without even standing up. You've made the whole world listen. Marcus placed his hand on his notebook. The word dignity stood bold like a banner. His voice was steady, resonant. Today, I am not fighting alone. Today, millions are fighting with me, and no airline, no corporation can silence us all. Applause thundered once again, but this time it was different, stronger, unified, triumphant. The first-class cabin was no longer a silent enclave of luxury. It had transformed into a hall where a movement was born. Naomi turned her camera back toward Marcus, whispering, Remember this moment. This is when history took a new turn. Marcus closed his eyes and leaned back in his seat. He knew that when the plane touched down, the media storm would hit with full force. But he also knew that from this moment on, there was no turning back. The entire world had stepped into the storm with him. The captain's voice boomed through the speakers, heavy as a final verdict. Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing to land at Los Angeles International Airport. Please fasten your seatbelts. But everyone in first class knew this landing was unlike any other. The air inside the cabin was thick. The roar of the engines outside only made their hearts race faster. Naomi Brooks panned her phone, her voice hoarse. "We're about to touch down. Reports say hundreds of journalists and protesters are waiting at the gate. Everyone, this will be a historic moment." Marcus Hale closed his notebook, his finger brushing the word dignity one last time before slipping it into his case. He gazed out the window where the sunset painted the sky in blazing red, like fire burning across the sea. Inside his chest, his heartbeat stayed calm, but his mind knew the truth. Once he stepped off this plane, he would no longer be an anonymous businessman. He had become a symbol. The wheels slammed onto the runway. The body of the aircraft shuddered, brakes screeching like metal screaming in pain. Some passengers held their breath, others clasped hands tightly. When the plane finally came to a halt, silence gripped the cabin. No one reached for the overhead bins. All eyes turned to Marcus. Paula Nguyen stepped forward, her voice so soft it sounded like she feared hearing it herself. "Mr. Hale, we have arranged a private exit. The rear door will take you out discreetly, away from the press and the tension." Marcus turned and looked directly at her. For a moment, the cabin seemed frozen. Then he shook his head, his voice reverberating. "No, the truth does not leave through the back door. I will walk out like every other passenger. Let the world see." His words struck like lightning. Many passengers nodded. Applause broke out. Evelyn Carter choked back tears, whispering, "God bless you, Marcus." The cabin door swung open. Noise from outside surged in like crashing waves. Shouts, chants, the crackle of cameras, the blare of loudspeakers. Security officers Ortega and Hayes stepped forward to form a shield, but Marcus raised his hand to stop them. He stood tall, straightened his collar, and began to walk. Each step was heavy as stone, yet proud as a march. Naomi live-streamed, her voice shaking. "Everyone, he's walking out. He refused the back door. He will face the world head-on." The narrow stairway shook beneath his steps. Then the world exploded in light as hundreds of camera flashes burst like midday sun. "Mr. Hale, did you cancel the $500 million deal with Aerovista? Are you planning to sue the airline? Do you see yourself becoming a new symbol of resistance?" The questions came like hail, relentless. But Marcus did not falter. He raised his hand high, palm open. The crowd hushed. Shouts fell silent like waves stopped by the wind. His voice rang out, steady and commanding. "This is not about a seat. This is about dignity. They tried to force me to stand, not because I was wrong, but because I was different. And today I say to you, dignity is never up for negotiation. Not mine, not anyone's." The crowd erupted. Cheers mixed with tears. Signs reading "Dignity is not for sale" rose into the air. Reporters pushed forward. Cameras whirled. The image spread instantly across every news channel, every social platform. Victor Lang pulled his coat tight, head bowed, slipping quietly through a side exit. His phone buzzed non-stop with dismissal notices, resignation demands. He knew his status had collapsed in a matter of hours. Dana Whitfield did not step off right away. She froze at the aircraft door, tears streaming down her face. Marcus's words echoed in her ears. The truth does not leave through the back door. For the first time, she realized she had chosen the wrong side of history. Marcus stood firm on the tarmac, his back straight, his face turned toward the sea of people. In that moment, he was no longer a CEO or a businessman. He was a banner millions were waiting to lift high. The noise on the runway rumbled like a storming sea. Shouts of "Marcus, Marcus," blended with chants of "dignity not for sale" from protesters behind the barricades. Cardboard signs and hastily painted banners rose into a forest of messages. Marcus Hale stood tall, camera flashes parking across his face like lightning before a storm. In front of him, a wall of reporters pressed close, microphones thrust from every angle. But in the middle of the chaos, a sudden gap opened. A group of men in dark suits escorting Aerovista's CEO, Leonard Pierce, 55 years old. Pierce stepped forward, his expression strained, beads of sweat glistening despite the cold wind on the runway. He raised a hand, his voice hurried and pleading. "Mr. Hale, please, not in front of the cameras. We can discuss this privately. It was just an incident. Aerovista is ready to compensate, to apologize publicly, whatever you want." Marcus did not answer at once. He let the silence weigh heavy. Every camera, every phone, every eye fixed on him. Then he spoke, his voice even, low, sharp as a blade. "Compensate? Tell me, how much money do you think it takes to buy back a person's dignity? How many checks will erase the humiliation your employees inflicted on Seat 1A? The crowd erupted in cheers and shouts. Naomi Brooks, still streaming live, choked up with emotion. "You heard him. This isn't about money. This is about truth." Pierce glanced around, forcing a stiff smile. "Please believe me, Aerovista never endorses discrimination. This was just an individual mistake." Marcus cut him off, his voice thundering. "No, Pierce, this was not a mistake. This is the culture your company has nurtured, and today the entire world has seen it." From within the crowd, Evelyn Carter shouted, "We were silent before, but not anymore." Applause and chants surged, sweeping away every excuse. Marcus pulled out his phone and switched on speaker. Clara Jennings, head of PR, spoke in urgent tones. "Mr. Hale, the market is collapsing. Aerovista stock is down 30%. The press is calling this the Waterloo of aviation. Do you want us to release an official statement now?" Marcus lifted his head, locking eyes with Leonard Pierce, then looking out at the sea of people, the microphones, the cameras. His words came slow, deliberate, carved into the air. "Release it. A global statement. Ellis Global withdraws from the $500 million merger with Aerovista. Reason: public discrimination against its own chief executive." The crowd roared like an earthquake. Cameras whirled frantically. Naomi's live stream flooded with so many comments she could not read them. Pierce's face went white, his voice faltering. You can't. That's thousands of jobs. The market, Marcus stepped closer, now only a few feet away, his eyes all cold and unyielding. "You're worried about the market. I'm worried about justice. If a company survives only by humiliating its customers, then it deserves to collapse. And today, Aerovista has written its own obituary." The cheers swelled like thunder. Passengers from first class poured down the steps, some raising phones to record, others clapping, joining the chants of the crowd. Dana Whitfield stood back, her hands covering her face, tears streaming, shame cutting deep. Every word Marcus spoke etched her name into this dark chapter. Victor Lang was no longer defiant. He slinked into the crowd, his phone buzzing non-stop. The last message glowed on his screen. "You're fired. Do not return to the office." Marcus turned to face the wall of cameras. His voice rose, ringing through the heavy air. "Today is not about me. Today is about all of us. Everyone who has ever been told they don't belong. From this moment, no one will be forced from their seat simply because someone else disapproved of their face. From this moment, silence is no longer an option." The crowd exploded. Banners waved high. Naomi wept, her live stream surpassing 2 million viewers. Marcus lowered his voice, gentle but carrying far. "Dignity is not for sale. Not ever." The scene at the Los Angeles terminal was nothing short of a public trial. But this trial had no judge, no jury, only the raw truth laid bare before millions of eyes. As Marcus Hale stepped into the sea of cameras and banners, he was no longer just a CEO, no longer just an investor. He had become a mirror reflecting the quiet pain of countless people who had once been forced to stand, who had once been told, "You don't belong here." Cameras zoomed close to his face, microphones pointed straight at him, yet Marcus remained calm. It was not the calm of a man accustomed to power, but the calm of someone who had touched the truth. Dignity is not a privilege. It is an inborn right of every human being. Hours earlier, in the cabin, a single phrase, "A man like you doesn't belong here," had unleashed an earthquake. And in silence, Marcus had turned it into a declaration that forced the entire world to stop and listen. Dana Whitfield kept her head bowed in the distance, tears streaming down her cheeks. She knew history would not remember her as a devoted attendant, but as a symbol of discrimination. Yet she also understood. Marcus had given her the chance to see the truth, and from here on, she would have to choose a different path. Victor Lang disappeared into the crowd, his reputation and career dissolving like foam on the tide. Evelyn Carter, seated among the throng, still clutched her husband's hand and whispered, "He didn't just hold his own seat. He held the seat for all of us." Naomi Brooks ended her live stream, her tears blurring the screen. She whispered to the millions, still watching, "Tonight we saw a man refuse to stay silent. And because of that, silence is no longer our choice." Marcus lifted his eyes to the Los Angeles night sky, where airport lights drew a man-made constellation. He knew this was only the beginning. Tomorrow, the press would battle for the story. Politicians would take sides. Markets would tremble. But he also knew that no matter the storm ahead, one thing could not be erased. The world had heard. And sometimes it takes only one person refusing to stand up for all of humanity to gain the right to sit down in dignity. In a world where silence is often purchased with fear, Marcus Hale proved that silence is no longer an option. Respect, dignity, justice, these are not thefts. They are basic rights. If you believe that dignity should never be for sale, leave a comment with 3 words: no silence. Like this video to spread the story. Subscribe to follow the journeys ahead, where truth will always find its voice and justice will never be buried. Because dignity is not for sale or